And I have a business called Abbey Joy Healing where I offer Ayurvedic lymphatic care and specifically breast care and uterus care. So today I'm going to be sharing a bit about Ayurvedic lymphatic breast care. So happy that you all are here, and feel free at any point if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat. But we'll start with a brief meditation, just connecting to our heart space and breast space. And then I'll have maybe about 15 minutes of anatomy, physiology of the breast, and just understanding a bit more about our breast tissue. And then we'll finish off with some self breast care. So happy that you all could make it. And yeah, let's dive right in. So just getting comfortable, finding comfortable seat or standing or wherever you are. And just taking a few nice deep breaths, filling all the way up from your low belly up through your chest, your upper chest space. And with your exhale, just letting that air all flow back outwards. And just taking a couple more deep breaths like that, really filling into the sides of your ribs and your back body. Maybe you want to sigh it out or hum it out. And then if you like, you can put your hands over your chest space, over your heart space. And if you can, just feel the beat of your heart, which is really the center of our vitality and also so very much connected to our lymph space. Our heart helps to pump our lymph through our bodies. And it's what pumps all of our blood and nutrients and energy to all of the cells of our body. So just connecting to this drumbeat that guides us all day long. And then connecting to the space around that, the chest and breast area. Just noticing if you have any sensations there today. If you feel warmth, if you feel any anxiety or excitement, grief, joy, just noticing any physical or emotional sensations. And then maybe just bringing your attention to any physical sensations of the breast area. Maybe if they feel numb or tender or activated in some way. Just noticing if there's anything that comes up for you around your breast. If there's any shame or fear or feelings of pleasure, gratitude. And maybe just observing if there's any stories that you feel attached here. If there's any stories over time from family members, from friends, partners, society. And just continuing to breathe into any of those stories and just noticing just noticing how they make you feel. And if there's any that perhaps you're ready to let go of, any that you're wanting to continue Okay, and then just bringing yourself back to the present, taking any movements that feel good. And we'll just come on back to, whatever comfortable seat you're in. And I'm going to share if there's anything that came up for anyone or that you want to share in the chat, you're welcome to, or any particular questions that you have for today. And then I'm just going to go ahead and share a little presentation. Okay, great. Okay, so Breast Care 101, some Ayurvedic practices to support the breast and chest. I'm just going to make sure that you can still see this. Okay, great. So, just a little bit about me. I think most of you all already know me by now, but I'm an Ayurvedic health counselor and lymphatic body worker. And for Whole Womanhood, I'm now the community alchemist. So, hanging out with you all in the collective and sharing different ideas and resources. So we'll just start with a quick overview of the lymph because Lara has gone so much into the amazing benefits of the lymph, but the lymph is our immune system and disposal system where we clear out any foreign invaders or viruses, pathogens, anything that our body is ready to release. And the lymph all flows in one direction. So it's just constantly identifying anything that our body does not want and then eliminating that through the digestive system, through the sweat, and through the feces. It also doesn't have a pump, so that's why doing our own lymphatic self-care is so important because otherwise the lymph can get stagnant or dry or stuck. So this is just a great way when we do lymphatic self-care to help our lymph system out. Okay, a little bit about the anatomy of the breast. I kind of highlighted some of the most important aspects of the breast tissue. One being the lymph nodes. This diagram isn't the most straightforward, but the lymph nodes are kind of tucked in here alongside the mammary glands. And there's lymph fluid that flows all throughout the breast tissue. And there's also lymph through our ribs over here and through the pecs and other muscles. So the lymph is kind of all throughout our breast tissue. We also have blood vessels you can see here that bring fresh oxygenated blood to the lymph and to the mammary glands, and then also bring blood back away. We have the mammary glands or ducts or lobules. There's lots of different names, and there's 15 to 24 on average per breast. And those are what are responsible for producing milk and are present in all breast and chest. Male bodies have them as well. Then we have the fascia, which is kind of all throughout the breast tissue as well, also kind of interspersed with the pectoral muscles. And the fascia is what can get kind of matted. It can also be part of when people say they have fibrocystic breasts, that like fibrousness, the in-between tissue, connective tissue. We have the muscle, which is the pecs and some other muscular tissue all through the chest here. And then finally, the adipose tissue or fat tissue, that's all this yellow. And that's what helps to store and produce hormones in the breast tissue. So here is just another image that kind of shows some of these lymph nodes. And this is what we're really going to be focusing on today is the lymph nodes that flow kind of through the chest and the armpits. And what this diagram doesn't necessarily show as well is that there's also lymphatic fluid that flows all throughout the breast tissue. So it's not just these specific lymph nodes, but there's also kind of lymph everywhere, in addition to lymph nodes between the mammary glands and lobules. Yeah, so lots of fun things going on in the breasts. So just a quick overview too of the more Ayurvedic lens on breast health and lymphatic health. We like to identify the lymph in terms of hot, cold, wet, and dry. So hot might be lymph in the breast that feels more sharp or inflamed, could be potentially more cystic. And you can identify that by usually pain or heat that emerges from that area. So if there's a part that you're like, ooh, that's really sharp to the touch, that's probably more like hot lymph. Then there's cold lymph, which tends to be more like small, pebble-like, might even feel kind of cold to the touch, and can be kind of sharp, painful too, but doesn't express as much heat. And it can also be fibrous tissue, can be kind of cold, just because it's more like dense or might become matted. So if there's areas that you're like, oh, that feels kind of like matted to my sternum or to the chest, that's more likely to be cold lymph. Then there's wet lymph, which tends to be maybe more feelings of like congested, enlarged, bloated. If you feel like you have cyclical changes with your breast tissue, that could indicate more wet lymph. And then finally dry, and that's really common, especially in this like upper zone, often because we hunch or crouch over, the lymph here can get kind of like cold and pebbly, or sorry, dry and gravelly. So that's when a gua sha is really helpful to help identify those areas of dry lymph, which we'll get into more in a little bit. So some symptoms that might be connected with hot, cold, wet, dry are cysts, as I mentioned earlier, and there's so much that we could get into with cysts. It's oftentimes a kind of buildup of bacteria or a virus, something that's causing inflammation in the tissue that the body is trying to address by bringing it together and creating basically this little hot pocket that will hopefully like express and release that bacteria or virus. But what can happen in the meantime is it can get really stuck and painful and agitated. And that's why it's really helpful to just do really gentle massage around that area to help the body express that excess inflammation and heat and not let it get stuck and fester in the breast tissue. Cysts are also super common. About 60 to 70% of people with breasts have cysts at some point. So really, really common. And it's just something that's helpful to be aware of and know that it is possible to help those move. And I really love frankincense essential oil, a few drops a couple times a day on that cyst to help that move. And we can get more into that later too. Okay, so stagnant lymph will present more as an achy, dull pain. The lymph speaks to us in pain. So when there's times that we feel that like achiness or soreness, that's a sign that our lymph needs support. So that's just more of a invitation to spend some extra time doing lymphatic breast care. Fibrocystic breasts, as I mentioned earlier, are when there is more fibrous tissue that's kind of like binding to an area. And it can be just genetic for most people. They might have more fibrous breasts innately, and that's not a bad thing at all. It can help the breast stay kind of more perky over time. But when there's more tissue that the lymph has to flow through, it can mean that cysts or other imbalances are slightly more likely. So that's just another great reason if you have fibrous breasts or breasts that are described as dense, maybe, then that's also just a great invitation to do more breast care. If you notice swelling, that's often connected to hormonal shifts because during the first part of our cycle, during the follicular phase and the ovulatory phase, the body is producing estrogen. That estrogen is also being produced and cycled through the breast tissue, which causes an increase in size of the mammary glands, basically to prepare them for potential pregnancy. So then if that lymph is stuck, the hormones can't properly flush afterwards, and that can cause some of that discomfort and pain. So that's, again, just more reason to do some breast care. And I always feel like it's important to mention potential cancerous, anything you might find in the breast. There's two main types that we look for, and neither of which have really sensation or pain. So if you are feeling an area that seems a little strange, but it is painful, that's a sign that it's probably more likely to be a cyst or something that you just need to spend some extra attention with. The two types of cancers that we look for are either really small calcium deposits, and they feel kind of like a little piece of porous rock that doesn't have any sensation attached to it. And yeah, it's like they won't change when you massage them, you keep working on them. they won't change. So I always like to recommend that people take a few weeks to work on something or go and see a provider and have them help address that area. And if it doesn't change over time, then that's a sign that you're like, I need to get this checked out further. And then the other is more quick growing, larger tumors that feel more like a rubber bouncy ball or something that's kind of like more hardened and round. And those will have little tentacles or, just like these attachments back to the sternum. So that's something you can be aware of is if there's something that feels like it has these little attachments and also won't change at all when you're working on it. Again, this can be kind of hard to discern for yourself when you're just learning. So it's really helpful to find a practitioner in your area who's really familiar with these different symptoms and can help you discern, like, oh no, that's just a cyst or that's a stuck lymph node. But in general, if something has sensation attached to it or connected to it, then that's a sign. It's like, okay, let me see if I can just work through this, get my gua sha, see if I can get this moving. And the most common zone for imbalances is the outside quadrant of the breast. Often because it's connected to this armpit zone, we want to make sure that all these lymph nodes on the outside can really move. That's where I find the most common cysts and other imbalances will form. So yeah, the more you can do to open up and support that outside zone, the better. Okay, I'm just gonna check real quick if there's any questions. Don't look like it. Okay, great. So this is, these are some options for if you do find something that is potentially concerning, or if you just want to get regular checks, which I think is great. Breast thermography is a really helpful resource. This is actually a breast thermography that I got last year. And I just found it to be so interesting because you can see where there's areas of heat or cool. And anything potentially concerning with breast care is going to be more connected to heat. So that's just like a sign, like, okay, I need to find these pockets where there's heat and get them moving. So for me, it's in these outside, like especially on the right side, this outside zone is more of that like yellow green. And so I was like, okay, I know that now I need to do more breast care on the upper right side in this outer quadrant. And something else that's kind of interesting you can see from breast thermography is vascular feeds. So that's these like veins that you just want to be aware of because cancers do create vascular feeds. And so if there's ever like a full circular feed, that's something that's like, okay, there might be something concerning there. So it's just good to like be aware of any of these like veins basically. So I just found this to be really interesting and informative and like a really helpful map to then know like, okay, there's zones where there's more heat, there's zones where there's more cool. This is where I should spend the most of my focus to really help my body out. And then another thing I often recommend is going to QT imaging, which is a really amazing new technology that's super effective. And it's a water bath technology that doesn't have any radiation. So when folks really want to get regular checks, but they don't necessarily want all of the radiation of mammograms, I often recommend QT imaging to just be able to get those regular checks and have lots more information. So you can go on their website and there's different sites around, especially in the North Bay, but around the US too. So I talked a little bit about this before, but I have been doing some more deep dives recently on how our hormones affect our breast tissue and why we might get more swelling and tenderness right before our periods or during ovulation. And I talked a little bit about this earlier, but the follicular and ovulatory phase, the body's producing estrogen to potentially prepare an egg or to prepare an egg. So this causes the growth of the mammary ducts, and that's why sometimes we might get more swelling around our periods, around ovulation. And then during the luteal phase, the body begins producing progesterone to maintain a potential pregnancy, even if there isn't a pregnancy. So this causes the growth of glandular buds, which are what actually produce milk. So if there's more congestion in the breast tissue or dryness, or just the body isn't able to properly flush hormones, then this can cause that swelling and discomfort. Again, I've really noticed that as I've done more breast care over time, that I have way less swelling and discomfort. So I think it's, yeah, good motivation. Whenever we do have discomfort, it's like, okay, this is just my sign. I need to spend a little bit of extra time. And then lastly, some emotional aspects of breast care. I talked some about this in the last video I did about Rasayana, or the lymphatic tissue in our body. But in Ayurveda, rasa is the same word for lymph and for emotions. So when our lymph is flowing, our emotions flow, and the breasts are such a zone of lymph in our body. So I find in my practice that emotions can really get stuck in the lymph tissue of the breast. And when we take that time to really tend to our breast wellness, it really allows our emotions to flow as well and allows for emotional health. They're also, the breasts are also considered in Ayurveda our connection to nourishment and to pleasure. And they're just such a beautiful source of care for both ourselves and for children or just other people in our lives. And lastly, the heart chakra, of course, is right next to our breasts, and the heart meridian, which goes from the outside of the pinky along the inside of the arm to our heart and the breast zone. So, yeah, just so much heart emotional care that goes into tending our breasts. And whenever I do breast care, I find that afterwards I'm like, wow, I feel like I just did therapy. Like I just moved so many emotions and different things through my body. Okay, great. So, some breast care 101. I'm going to stop the screen share. Well, maybe I'll just do a quick description and then we can go into doing it ourselves. But I like to find my favorite salve or oil. It doesn't have to be fancy. I love Diana Essentials breast cream, but you can also just get sesame oil, almond oil, whatever makes you feel juicy. This is some salve that a friend made for me with some yarrow and Vitex, clary sage, and cypress essential oils, which are all wonderful for hormonal health. And I try to do self breast massage for 2 to 10 minutes, at least 3 times a week. And if that's not possible, even just doing 1 minute once a week, any small amount makes such a difference. And other tools that we can go into are gua sha, love my gua sha, cups, salt scrubs. And yeah, you can go back to and watch my Lymph Care 101 video for other good lymph tools. Okay, great. So I think we can turn this off and stop the screen share. Okay, great. And get into some self breast massage. Turn the spotlight on. Okay, so I always like to start, I guess first, any questions or thoughts before we dive in? Okay, perfect. Well, I always like to start by opening up this subclavian drain. Great. Oh, great. Thanks, Sean. Okay, so this subclavian drain is where all of the lymph in our body drains back to. So we always want to make sure that this is open before we do any other lymph care. So I like to start, you can use your hands, you can use a gua sha if you like, you can use cups if you have them, but really just your hands is great. And sometimes I like to get a little, if you're doing this at home, you don't need to have your shirt on. You can just go for it and get lots of oil. And yeah, I like to get a little bit of oil and start by just massaging this upper zone. And the beauty of the lymph is that it's really surface level. And so even if you're not going super hard, you're making a difference. And I just like to remind myself that. It's like, okay, you don't have to be doing something super intense to create change. And as we're going, you may just start to notice, like, okay, what am I feeling? Do I feel any little bumpies? Do I feel any tenderness? Do I feel anything that feels more sharp or more dry? This is a really common area to find those little dry lymph nodes, especially right underneath the clavicle. So if you do have a gua sha, that's a really kind of like interesting zone to kind of feel and be like, oh yeah, there's some little crunchies in there. Just if you want to start getting a feel for like what is dry lymph, what is congested lymph. Yeah, a little dry lymph in there. Okay, and then I like to do some armpit care, and you might even notice like I got a little redness coming up there. It's good, moving some lactic acid. So then we get into the armpits, and this is when some salve is really nice. So you just want to notice like, okay, is there tenderness? Does it feel more like congested? I can feel, especially out here, kind of some more like rounded lymph nodes. Like they feel a bit more bulbous or almost like gnocchi or almond like as compared to the like more small dry lymph nodes here. You can also look and see if your armpits are bulging out more, and that's a sign that there's some more congested lymph or stuck lymph there. So yeah, we'll just take some time here, make sure that that's all open. The armpits are so important for our overall lymph health, and they're such an important drain too for any old viruses or anything to move out. Okay, and then we do the other side, just getting in there. I've been getting really into recently doing armpit masks, and I think Galera has a recipe on there, but basically you just mix bentonite clay, apple cider vinegar, and you can add a couple drops of essential oil. Coriander essential oil and rosemary essential oil are really great in there. And then you just leave it on. You can put it over your whole breasts and your armpits for like 15 minutes, let it dry, and then it really helps to just like draw everything out. It feels so good. And I find that afterwards, especially if I feel like I have more like tender or fibrous breasts, afterwards it feels so much softer. So it's just like a really easy thing to do. Okay, so once we feel like our armpits are nice and open, always make sure to keep breathing while you're doing this. Then we'll move to actual breast tissue. So I'll scoot back a little bit so you can see. So you can kind of imagine dividing your breast into like 4 quadrants. And we just want to make sure that throughout the course of our care that we're spending time with each of those quadrants. So I like to start with this like outside zone because it is really the most likely to get congested and stuck. And you can do anything that just helps it feel like it's moving. So just noticing areas of tenderness and making some little circles. And the amount of pressure is really dependent on what feels okay in your body. You don't want to do so much pressure that you're like, this is so painful. But you want to use kind of just enough that you're like, okay, this is like doing something. So yeah, just making some little circles, using both hands. You can also kind of do it with both hands if you want. Sometimes I use my knuckles and kind of do it like that. But I kind of like to focus on one side and then the other. If you do have a gua sha, this is a great time to just like kind of do a little scrub. And you can do it over your clothes like me. You can do it without clothes on, just kind of whatever works the best for you. Usually I like to do my lymphatic breast care when I'm either in the shower or after the bath or in the sauna or steam room when the body's kind of like warm and juicy. So yeah, just noticing like, oh, today I really feel it kind of right in there, just kind of below the armpits. This is all about just being an observer and being like, okay, how can I send myself love and care and yeah, just be tender with myself and notice like, okay, where am I feeling areas that are more tender? Where am I feeling areas that are more sharp? Where am I feeling areas that might feel more numb? And then we'll make our way to this inside quadrant. And this is a really common zone that you might find what we call matting. And matting is when the fascia and the lymph truly like mat down to the sternum here. And that can be, you can feel that because it's a bit more mounded up. And that's also, it's really common if you've worn underwire or just any type of constrictive bra over time. There can be this like squashing down of the tissue to the sternum. So again, I kind of like to use my fingers here and almost like try to separate the fascia from the sternum and from the ribs. It's another really great place for some gua sha. And if you have cups at home, which are really not that expensive, you can get them from Lhasa OMS, and I'll put all these things in the apothecary and in products. You can put a few cups right there, and that is so great for just like, sucking those matted fascia from the sternum. Okay, and then we'll move to this top quadrant. And again, just noticing if there's any zones that feel hot, if there's small, dry bumpies, if there's kind of like larger congested zones. Taking a nice deep breath. And then finally, we'll work around the areola nipple. And sometimes the nipple will express, especially if you have breastfed or if you are breastfeeding. If you are breastfeeding, it's generally best to just kind of like work outwards here, so it's not like intentionally activating milk production. But for many people who I've worked with, they'll, even if they haven't breastfed in years, then like some old dry milk will come out, or lymphatic fluid looks like a little bit of like bluish clear fluid. And if that comes out, it's okay. It's not a sign of anything bad. It's just we don't necessarily want to express our lymph fluid, so you can just kind of give that side a break. Sometimes if people have yeast imbalances, then some yellowish fluid will come out, and that's usually a sign of a cyst. So that's a good opportunity to add some frankincense oil. Okay, we can stop that side. Give your hands a little break. Shaky, shaky, shaky. Okay, and then we can kind of work the other side while we're talking. So again, starting in this outside zone. And then the only type of breast fluid that we're really concerned about is if there's ever blood. And that is almost always a sign that you want to get checked out, because it can either be something more concerning, or just in general, when blood comes out of orifices is not a great sign, except for, of course, our menstrual bleed. So yeah, that's probably a good time to go see a practitioner and see if they have further information for you. So again, just working this outside zone. And the two sides might be completely different. That's totally normal. Almost always our two breasts are totally different. And this is really helpful for people who have chests too, for male bodies. Chest cancer is also a thing, and everyone's lymph gets stuck. And this is such an important lymphatic zone, no matter what. So this is so great to share with everyone in your life. So I'm just kind of making my way down along the bottom here. Like, ooh, right there's tender. So when there is tenderness, taking some extra breaths. And just making your way along the bottom. If there's any matting, like, oh yeah, for some reason today this side is way more tender. So, and I really encourage, if you're in the privacy of your own home, just get a bunch of oil, like take a nice warm shower, get a bunch of oil, slather it everywhere, get your gua sha and just kind of like go to town. Just like get in there, notice where there's areas of tenderness. it's of course great to do it over your clothes too. And I often find myself now just like in the car, waiting in line, whatever, like massaging my breasts. I'm like, well, this becomes second nature. But definitely, it's so nice to do when you're like just fresh out of the shower. Everything's all nice and warm and juicy. Something else that can be interesting to look at is your areolas and nipples, because they're almost like a map of congested lymph in the body. So you can look at the zone kind of around your areola, and if there's places where there's little bumps coming up, then that is a sign that there might be like a little cyst or a little stuck lymph there, almost like directly out from that zone. Let me see if I can show in the presentation. Okay, so like for example, so in the areola, if you notice like a little bump here, a little bump there, then that's a sign that maybe like from that mammary gland or that lymph that's connected right there, there might be some inflammation or swelling. So that's just like a good sign. You're like, okay, I see there's a little bit of inflammation there. Let me work this zone a bit more. Our bodies tell us so much. They're amazing. Trying to think if there's any last juicy tidbits of lymphatic breast health to share. Yeah. Okay. So some really good. And you can just take a nice couple last deep breaths, shake it all out, and just notice if you feel any more sensation or any difference in sensation from before we started. So some of my favorite additional lymph support and breast support is castor oil. So just rubbing in castor oil and using a warm compress to seal that in. So helpful. Kalanamak salt, which is a black sulfur salt from India, is so helpful, especially if you have more cysts or congestion. I'll add information about that as well. I like to make a scrub with the kalanamak and castor oil, and then just scrub that in when I'm in the shower. And it's pretty remarkable the difference that it makes. It's really amazing how quickly it can just melt pain, scar tissue. If you ever are a person who has scar tissue, especially from like a breast reduction or breast enhancement or something like that, that's a really important area to get in there with a gua sha or your kalanamak and castor oil, just to make sure that the lymph and the blood flow in that zone can continue to flow. And frankincense essential oil, as I mentioned earlier, is so helpful for cysts and inflammation. Just a random note that if you ever have a cyst on an ovary, that's not something you want to massage and work out. That's something to just kind of like let rest and go to a doctor and maybe put a couple drops of frankincense oil externally. But with the breasts, you can kind of work it more, and it's really great to gently massage cysts. So what my teacher, Deanna Batdorf, recommends is every time you go to the bathroom, just taking a few seconds to squeeze your breast, squeeze the cyst a little bit, not with the intention of like bursting it, but just with like, just to get flow moving there. You always want to make sure that you do drink lots of water, especially after doing any type of lymph work, to get anything that you may have stirred up flowing again, so your body can flush out if there's any type of like old yeast or toxins or viruses. Yeah, just a really good opportunity to drink those electrolytes. Okay, I think that is most of what I want to cover for today. So yeah, if there's any final questions, you're welcome to share them in the chat. Or if you have questions afterwards, you can always put them in discussions or send me a message or an email. I'll put up for a second my my contact information just in case anyone has questions afterwards. Share.
Abby,
Yeah.
hi.
Yay, hi.
Hi. So for cupping,
Uh-huh.
I have pretty puffy armpits,
Uh-huh.
and so yeah, how long do you recommend? I know about like I've done some slide cupping on the different matted areas, but I'm curious for armpits, like how long you recommend cupping for.
Totally. I usually leave cups there for like 5 to 10 minutes, I would say.
Okay.
Kind of as long as it still feels good and it doesn't feel like it's getting irritating. It's kind of helpful too if you can have someone else put it on for you because it can be a little awkward, but you can totally do it yourself too. And if you can just like lay back and have your arms draped up,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say like 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
And you can also do slide cupping too, like kind of stick them on there and then work this zone out here.
Mm,
Yeah, good question. I love cupping the armpits. It feels so weird, but it's so good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Yay. Thanks, Sean. Okay, perfect. Okay, well here I'll put this this back up. And, oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's my information if anyone needs it. And a couple additional resources. So my teacher, Deanna, her website, Deanna Essentials, she has amazing wooden gua shas. Highly recommend. And then I usually get my oils and salves from Banyan Botanicals, which is an Ayurvedic company, or Mountain Rose Herbs, which has really high quality herbs and oils and all sorts of goodies. But yay! Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you all in the collective.
Thank you.
Summer,
Bye-bye.
yeah. Yay, thanks, Sean.